management, and which helps us trace how many days does it take for the firm to get its raw material converted into finished goods, sell them in the market. If there are debtors, collect the debtors. If you have creditors, then make the payment. So for the entire process, how many days are required? That was what we calculated as the operating cycle of the firm. Now there's a question on your screens under which you are given the information for a particular year. Now you see here that you are given the opening and closing values for raw material, work in progress, debtors, creditors. So each of the period which we'll be calculating under operating cycle, say we start with the raw material conversion period, then that will consider the average in the numerator, average of raw materials, average of work in progress, and so on. So average will be calculated by taking the sum total of opening and closing divided by 2. So you can calculate the average for all these values very easily. Okay. After that, in the question, you are given some data from your profit and loss account, and assuming 360 days in a year, you have to calculate the operating cycle in number of days, cash cycle in number of days, and working capital required for the year. Now for this, in this question, operating cycle means the gross operating cycle. What was gross operating cycle? The sum total of inventory conversion period plus debt collection period. Cash cycle was the net operating cycle, which was gross minus the credit payment period. And third part of the question is working capital required for the year. So what we'll do is you first solve the first and second part, and then we'll take up the third part. I'll write the formulas so that it becomes convenient to solve, and then we'll discuss the answers. We're given 360 days in the year, you'll take the values accordingly. Since we are taking this into 360, so this is the raw material will be the purchases. We assume that all purchases and sales, if nothing is mentioned in the question, are on credit basis. So here consumption of raw material. So there's no need to calculate the daily consumption. You will put the consumption and into 360. And also you take the production cost, daily term is not required. And for finished goods, it will be average of finished goods divided by into 360. So please start solving. This is the first part, operating cycle calculation. So all the values are there. Quickly calculate the operating cycle. So how much is the raw material conversion period coming to? So it's coming to 60 days. Then work in progress. It is average work in progress divided by production cost. Yes, absolutely right. 21.6. Finished goods. This is coming to 45. The rest of you also check. And the debtors collection period. So average of debtors divided by your total sales, as entire sales and purchases are assumed to be on credit basis. So debtor collection period is coming to 35 days. Let's see what is the sum total. Okay, so sum total is coming to 141, 161. days. Okay, this is your gross operating cycle. Okay, since in our question we have been asked gross and cash separately, we'll leave this as the first part. But if a simple operating cycle is asked, then you calculate both the gross and the net operating cycle. Okay, so we come to the second part, which is calculation of the cash cycle. So cash cycle is nothing but your net operating cycle, which will be gross operating cycle less the credit payment period. So that will be calculated as average creditors divided by annual purchases into 360. So just check what is the answer coming to.
मैम ब्लर हो रहा
क्या
है
स्क्रीन ब्लर हो रही है?
यस मैम वो जो क्वेश्चन का स्क्रीनशॉट लिया हुआ
अच्छा,
है वो ब्लर सा हो रहा है
एक
काफी
मिनट बेटा मैं चेक करती हूँ, जूम इन करती हूँ. See now is this clear?
यस मैम
Okay. So you need to take average of creditors, which will be 2,50,000 divided by purchases 16 lakh into 360. So you can calculate what is the net value of the cash cycle. Yes, 56. Your credit payment period is coming to 56.25. You can reduce the values, you will get how much? 105.35 days. Okay, this will be your cash cycle. This is the time period in which the cash circulates for one cycle. Start with cash, you take inventory, convert it into work in progress, finished goods, sell the finished goods, get the payment from the debtors, make the payment to the creditors. Net cash operation, the circulation of cash in the business per cycle takes 105.35 days. Okay, I hope all of you have got this answer. Third
मैम
one question. हाँ जी बेटा.
मैम मैम ये 56.25 तक समझ में आ गया उसके बाद ये 105.35 कैसे आ रहा है
क्रॉस में से ये क्रेडिट पेमेंट पीरियड माइनस करना है ना. 161.6 minus 56.25.
अच्छा मैम ओके
ठीक है, ये डिफरेंस है. Okay, now we'll see how many. Look, cash cycle will now tell you how many working capital cycles are there in the year. So this can be calculated as 360 divided by 105.35. So, how many cycles of working capital are there in a year? Just check. और नंबर ऑफ ऑपरेटिंग साइकिल्स क्योंकि आप ऑपरेटिंग उससे कर रहे हो तो इसको ऑपरेटिंग साइकिल्स इन अ ईयर कर सकते हो. दैट वुड बी अ बेटर टर्म. Number of operating cycles in a year. So they are coming to 3.42. So this will help you to calculate the working capital requirement. This is one of the methods of calculating the working capital requirement. So working capital requirement will be cost of sales divided by the number of operating cycles. So which in your case is 3.42. आपका cost of sales question में दिया हुआ है 20 lakh. So 20 lakh divided by 3.42 will give you your working capital requirement for a particular year. So that is coming to, please calculate 20 lakh. Sorry, this is 30 lakh. I'll just zoom in on the value also. This is 30 lakh divided by 3.42. So how much is the value coming to? 8,77,193. Okay, so for the year, this is the working capital requirement 877,193. Okay, if you want, you can check the answer also. What is working capital requirement? The money you need to put in current assets less the current liabilities. तो आपके current assets यहाँ पर raw material, work in progress, finished goods. These three are your current assets. Your debtors are your current assets, and creditors are your current liabilities. So you can check. You take the numerator of all these values, all these formulas. Average raw material plus average work in progress plus average finished goods plus average debtors less average creditors. The amount will be equal to 8,77,193. सारे formulas में से आपको numerator की value pick करनी है. Put the values, add up all the values from the gross operating cycle less average creditors. You should get 8,77,193. Take a minute and check your answer. Are you getting the same value? Yes. Okay, so these are two alternate ways in which you can calculate the working capital. If you are given a question where you are first calculating the operating cycle of the business. Okay, now there are number of approaches wherein you can directly also calculate the working capital requirements, so which we will be doing later. Let's first come to the next topic. Please complete this question, everyone. Okay, we had done the working capital need, factors affecting working capital. So now we come to the financing of working capital. So you need to maintain funds in your current assets, but you also need to finance those current assets. So what are the various sources of finance? What are the short-term sources of finance or long-term sources of finance which are available? Since we are talking about current assets, our focus is on the short-term sources of finance which are available for financing the current assets of the business. Now, what happens in a business is that we finance the long-term assets or your fixed assets through long-term sources. So, say if generally this is what happens, if I have to purchase a machine will have a life of 5 years. So for that, I'll take a loan of 5 years. Okay. But if I have to finance, say, my debtors because they'll not be making the payment, I'm basically financing my credit sales. So therein, I'll go for some short-term source of finance, a current liability. So what are the various modes of financing available for working capital? Just have a look. Trade credit. So these are the terms. We will discuss each of them one by one. What is a trade credit? Anyone? What is trade credit? No one? जो सिंपल क्रेडिटर्स होते हैं आपके, जो सप्लायर्स आपको क्रेडिट बेसिस पर रॉ मटेरियल सप्लाई करते हैं, दैट अरेंजमेंट इज नोन एज ट्रेड क्रेडिट. So for a short period of time, you are being given some credit payment period. Okay, you have been given some raw material on credit basis, so for which you can make payment at a later date. That becomes the trade credit. Next term is cash credit or bank overdraft. What is bank overdraft? Should I call out names and ask what is bank overdraft?
Negative balance of account.
Negative balance, is that allowed with every account?
No, ma'am. Only with current account.
Only with current account. When you can withdraw more than the amount that has been deposited in your account. Now, this again is a facility given to current account holders for which interest is charged by the bank. Next is working capital loan, literal meaning a short-term loan taken to finance the working I'm sorry, working capital requirement of the business. Yes, Shrey, you're right about the bank overdraft. Then we come to discounting of bills. What is the discounting of bills? Purchase of bills or discounting of bills? Done in accounts number of times. What is bill discounting?
मैम वो बैंक को लेकर है मतलब उसे DRB.
पर वो बेसिकली है क्या, अरेंजमेंट क्या होती है ये? बिल्स रिसीवेबल कौन इशू करता है?
मैम जिसने डेट ले रखी होती है.
So when a debtor acknowledges to the creditor that he will make the required payment on time. तो वो एक्नॉलेजमेंट जो होती है वो बिल बन जाता है। अब अगर क्रेडिटर को स्पेसिफाइड टाइम पीरियड से पहले कैश चाहिए तो ही कैन
वो
अप्रोच अ
बैंक
बैंक। हाँ हाँ
बैंक फिर डिस्काउंट कर देता है, मतलब थोड़ा इंटरेस्ट, फिर वो बैंक बाद में बीआर से पैसे लेता है डेटर से।
पैसा कलेक्ट करता है, एब्सोल्युटली राइट। सो द creditor approaches a bank. Bank will give immediate cash on the bill once verified. तो से 100 रुपीज का बिल है, बैंक 95 रुपीज दे देगा क्रेडिटर को। अब उसके बाद अरेंजमेंट शिफ्ट हो जाती है बैंक और डेटर के बीच में। ऑन द ड्यू डेट ऑफ द डेट, ऑफ द एक्सपायरी ऑफ द डेट, it is now the bank which will collect the 100 rupees from the debtor. Okay. Next term, the next two terms, if I talk about, they are related. One is bank guarantee and one is letter of credit. What is a bank guarantee? बैंक किसकी गारंटी देगा? In a financial arrangement, when bank gives the guarantee of the credit worthiness of any of the counterparties, now that can be the buyer or the seller, then that becomes a bank guarantee. Especially if the buyer fails to make the payment to the seller, then it becomes the financial obligation of the bank to make the payment to the seller. So that is bank guarantee. Letter of credit is also a similar arrangement. Two counterparties हैं, आपका बैंक आपकी गारंटी दे रहा है that you will be able to make the payment in the future. The only difference is letter of credit as an instrument is used in international trade. तो यहाँ पर जो काउंटर पार्टीज होती हैं वो इंपोर्टर और एक्सपोर्टर होता है। So in international trade, the shipment of goods, say for example, will take a comparatively long period. Okay, so if a shipment is coming from US to India, then a bank in India is giving a letter of credit to the bank of the exporter sitting in the US, wherein the importer's bank is giving guarantee that if the importer will not make the payment, it is the bank which will make the payment to the exporter. ओके तो यहाँ पर इंपोर्टर की गारंटी बैंक दे रहा है, दिस इज लेटर ऑफ क्रेडिट. ओके so again it is a bank guarantee. Bank guarantee is generally for localized trades. Letter of credit is for international trade transactions. Next is factoring. What is factoring? Factoring I think हमने डिस्कस करा हुआ है. No idea, anyone? So factoring is sale of your debtors. Okay, the amount your accounts receivable जो हम sell करते हैं, accounts receivable or debtors are reflected as current assets on your balance sheet. Okay, but that is worthless if there is urgent requirement of money. आपने डेटर को पेमेंट के लिए 2 मंथ्स दिए, पर से 1 मंथ बाद आपको कैश रिक्वायर्ड है, debtors won't be making the payment before expiry of those 2 months. So what can you do? You can sell your debts, book debts to a factor who will now, like discounting में जो हमने करा था, every 100 rupees of debtor पे वो आपको 95 rupees दे देगा. आपकी immediate cash requirement fulfill हो गई. Now the factor will approach the debtor at the expiry of 2 months and collect that 100 rupees of debt. Okay, so instead of a bank, now there is a third party, which is again a factor जो थर्ड पार्टी है अब उसकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है इस डेट को कलेक्ट करना। तो जो अरेंजमेंट है वो सिमिलर है लाइक ऑफ द डिस्काउंटिंग ऑफ बिल्स। Next term used is commercial paper. Now, commercial papers are money market instruments which help corporates to raise money for a short period of time. Okay, so for the timing, just understand that this is also having a maximum duration of up to 1 year. And intercorporate deposits, intercorporate मतलब एक कंपनी दूसरी कंपनी के डिपॉजिट्स में इन्वेस्ट कर रही है, so that or that also becomes a mode of short term financing for a firm. So these are some of the sources available for short term working capital financing. Now how this is actually applied in the business depends on the choice of the working capital financing approach. A bank has, sorry, a firm has three main choices, alternate approaches to financing of working capital. One is hedging approach, then conservative and aggressive approach. So we'll start with the hedging approach. So it's already time because it will take time to explain the approaches.